Okay, awesome. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Emmet Golden-Marx. I am an astronomer by trade. I earned my PhD in 2020 during the beginning of COVID.
Right.
Uh, so I got my PhD from Boston University, uh, studying high redshift galaxy clusters, hosting bent radio AGN with Professor Elizabeth Blanton. I
Okay.
had previously done my undergraduate work at Brown University, and then since earning my PhD, I've sort of traveled the globe as a
Right.
postdoc. So I spent 3 years in Beijing at Tsinghua University, studying protoclusters with Zheng
Right.
Sai, and now I'm at ENAF in Padova,
Mhm.
where I'm still studying protoclusters in preparation for ELT with Marco Kuliasek and Benedetta Volcani. Um, so that is a little bit about me as an introduction. Yeah. I'm
Right.
originally from
And
the
you're
US too.
originally American, right? I don't know which
Yes.
state, but
Yeah, so I grew up in upstate New York, so not the
okay.
big city, but about 3 hours north in Saratoga Springs.
All right. No, absolutely. Okay. Amazing. So you're very well traveled. How do you
Yeah,
feel about that? You've seen a lot in the world, and then like going from culture to culture also, because it's
yeah,
like American culture is very different from Chinese culture. Now you're
yeah,
in Italian culture. It's very different to immerse yourself in all of these environments. So
yeah,
how do you culturally feel about all this traveling and
yeah.
then going from one place to another?
I've enjoyed all of my time. Like you can definitely. I was expecting when I moved to China that like
Okay.
life in China beyond academia just would be different than
Right.
life in the
Very
US. Obviously,
different.
uh, my Mandarin is not amazing. Um,
Were
so
you prepared for it though?
I had done a little bit of Duolingo and
Okay.
stuff, but like my Mandarin even at its best is
Right.
not good at all.
Okay.
So I knew going in that like that parts of daily life would be more difficult because I'd be
Mhm.
relying on translation apps. But I
True.
had some friends who'd spent time in China, so I knew that that
Mhm.
was a thing that it
Oh,
was
okay.
feasible.
Right.
That like
Like here, right?
yeah, that I could scan photos and say, okay, like here's this word in
Okay.
Mandarin. Okay, that's what this is.
Right.
So that I could figure that out. Uh, and then similarly in Italy, my Italian is a little bit better than my Mandarin. I'm able to more easily translate things
Right.
and figure out what different things are. But I've really enjoyed getting to experience academia in different parts of the world, and you can see that there are differences. I think the, having done most of my schooling in the Northeast of the United States, there's sort of like a homogenized notion of like, well, this is what college and universities are.
Mhm.
And I think not that they're so different going
Right.
from country to country, but you do see some differences just amongst the way that students interact with faculty or
Right.
the way sort of like the work-life balance is of the as you go from different places. And you can see the pros and cons in each system. Uh,
The DEI culture should be also very different in
yes,
those environment because in US you have so many immigrants and then people have established themselves there. So the
yes,
country is built by immigrants kinda. But
yeah.
when you go to China, it's around like 4,000 years of culture,
Yeah.
like hardcore Chinese culture. And I think they're also not doing very well DEI wise. So I don't know how your experience was over
It's
there.
definitely. I mean, in the U.S., obviously, growing up as a white guy in the U.S., I'm in the majority, but also like I was used to
Right.
seeing people who didn't look like me on a daily basis,
Right. True.
and that was like that we had a mix of about a 50-50 gender split, and then
Right.
having people from different ethnicities both in my classes and in the departments and giving talks. And when I was in China, I was one of at the most we had was about 10 foreigners in the department.
Oh, this.
And
Okay.
so at most, so the majority of the people, the
Right.
overwhelming majority of the people were Chinese,
Okay.
and then a lot more. The male female divide was a lot more skewed, more male.
Mm.
Um, so they were slowly trying to improve that, and they were very pro hiring foreigners.
Right.
But especially because it was during COVID, when I arrived, there were two
Mm.
foreigners in the department. By the time I left, it was closer to 10. But still, when you're at 10 in a department of including graduate students, about 70 or 80 people, you do really feel a little bit more isolated. And I can see, if you're someone who is coming either to Europe or to the US from, not either an English speaking country or primarily or a Caucasian country, and you're going to a country where all of a sudden you're going to stand out. It is, difficult to like feel like every day I took the subway in China, it's like I think I'm the only white guy on this subway. People would, I was kind of used to like, I miss the anonymity. When I'm walking around
Right.
Italy or when I'm walking around the US, like
Right.
if people don't
True. You
hear
were
me
standing
speak,
out so much, right?
I don't stand out. And yeah, it doesn't help. I'm a tall guy
I don't
with
know
a
if
big
this
red
was
beard,
like
and in
shared
China that
experience with
stands
you
out.
as well, because I mean, we Middle Eastern, we look very different from the rest of the world, in China especially. I do remember when we were in overcrowded cities like Shanghai, for example, people used to gather around us and take photos even. So
Oh
were
my God.
you having like this feeling of being
Yes, so
celebrity for a few
so many
years, I
times.
suppose?
Yeah, I mean, so I have a twin brother who is also an
Right,
astronomer, and
true.
he
Right.
was in China for part of the time that
Okay.
I was there, and we traveled around a little bit.
Okay.
And we when we visited Xi'an to see the
Right.
Terracotta Warriors, I remember we like there must have been 10 or so people who came up to take photos with us, and it's like we are at like a cultural heritage site that is so much more interesting than two white guys just standing in line. But
I mean, in
but
their
yeah,
defense, like I also took a selfie with you and your brother because you're just
yeah,
so beautiful together. So
but
I mean, that's
yeah, but
partly
like
on you.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah, no. I mean, I'm. There was that sort of, it was fun when like a little kid would do it, or sometimes I would
Right.
have people come up. Oh, can my grandfather take a photo with you? And it's like, okay, do you
Okay.
really want to take a photo with us? But you're just using your grandfather as the like as the
Right, no, this is true. But I have an extra
yeah,
question for
yeah,
you, like a bonus question before we're
yeah,
even starting the first question. So you have a twin brother who is also
yeah.
doing astronomy, but he's also doing the very same type of astronomy. So you're both
Similar,
doing
similar. I mean,
galaxies.
yes, we both.
So I
Yeah,
mean, it's not like one of you is like doing, for example, I don't know, something very different. Like one of you is doing black holes, for example. The other one is like doing a stellar astronomy. It's
yeah.
like, I mean, you're still like in the same discipline,
Yes,
kind of.
yeah, yeah. So yeah,
So
so
do you
he
want to open with this? Do you want to like
sure.
comment on this? Like, how did this happen? Like, I mean, how did you become an astronomer? But you also had a
Yeah.
companion, like a twin brother who looks
Yeah. I
very
mean, so
like you. And
I mean, like obviously
this is
our high
crazy.
school, so
I
we
just
went to
want to say this.
college
This
together.
is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So we went to college together and we obviously
Right.
did high school together. So our academic upbringing was pretty similar. Both of our parents are English professors. So in a,
Right.
a
Okay.
college setting, but
Right.
not anywhere towards the sciences. My
Right.
mom does Victorian literature. My dad does
Oh.
environmental writing and eco-criticism. So a little bit
Oh, wow.
sciencey, a little bit,
Yeah,
but
like,
not
they're very
not
different,
physics.
right? But did you
Um,
have someone else in your family who was very science oriented,
I
like as
my
a role
my
model or no?
my grandfather was a cardiologist, so he was
Okay.
always very pro science.
Okay.
But he also really loved to read and like
Right.
so like the just a well balanced education was always very important. So I
Okay.
think I think whatever we had been interested in, my parents would have been pro us doing it. If it had been art, if
Okay.
it had been music, if it
Right.
had been English like them, I think any of those things they would have been excited that we were excited about something.
Right.
And I think for both of us, we'd always been really good in math. And,
Okay.
a lot of high school science early on is like memorization, like, biology, it's like memorizing all these
Oh
different,
yeah, always
organ,
right.
parts of
No,
the
no,
body.
no.
And I think for both of us, and
This
I
is
know,
why I
I think
hate
it's,
it.
yeah, no, like
Absolutely hate
chemistry,
it.
especially for me, high school chemistry was just like,
Right.
it's not a spelling test, but it's basically a spelling test. It's, like
I know,
this chemical compound.
right?
It's like,
I know,
okay,
yeah. Like
it
how
makes
much
up
you
this. And
remember. Okay, yeah,
yeah,
like a
and
crazy.
whereas I think what excited me about physics was you were actually kind of doing even with like elementary physics problems, you're doing an analysis. You're saying
Right.
here is a problem, a ball rolling down a hill, which you can
Right.
easily recreate. Maybe not a frictionless version, but you can easily
Of
put a
course.
ball on a
Yes.
hill, roll it, and see
No, right.
okay how fast is it supposed to be going.
Right.
And you're
Right.
using mathematics where for the first time you're doing calculus where it's not just solve this math problem, but it's like here's why you want to solve a math problem.
Right.
So you got to apply that math and uh, do it in such a way that you could sort of have a purpose for doing it. And I think that
Right.
was what excited me about physics. So then, not that I hadn't been interested in science and in space before, but when I went to college, I knew okay, I want to study physics because I think it's really cool. And then when I was trying to figure out what kind of physics do I want to do? It can be, it's a bit
Right.
overwhelming. Brown's physics department spans, the full gamut of
True. Right.
modern physics, from people
Right.
doing particle physics to biophysics and obviously to
Right.
astrophysics. And I think one of the things, I had a lot of friends who really liked particle physics, and there's a suspension of disbelief in particle physics that yes, you build these enormous, fantastic colliders, and you
Right.
have to believe that what is going on inside them is there because you can't see it.
Right.
And I think I liked in astronomy that yes, I am never going to touch a galaxy cluster.
Right.
I'm never even going to get close to, seeing one of these systems really evolve, but I can
Right.
look at them and say, this is the system that I am
Right.
studying. Let's see what I can figure out with the data that I'm given. So I
True.
really liked that, obviously astronomy, everything looks really cool.
Right.
As someone who
Even the
likes art,
little things, right?
yeah, as someone who likes art, like, we look at all our images and, they're little, little paintings basically of the night
Right.
sky, and,
True.
figuring out like
Right.
how, it's not just a mystery, but, it's aesthetically pleasing too.
Right. Of
Um,
course. But
yeah.
also, I don't know if you had this type of feeling because I absolutely had this when I was doing gravitational waves that I found that community very vertical. It was like everything was like from top to bottom, kinda. The knowledge was coming from top to bottom. So did you have that sort of feeling with LHC as well? You think particle physics is dictated from a certain community from top to bottom?
I
Or
mean, I will say I didn't dive too much into it, so I was
okay,
like,
right. So
so I
you
can't
are
I can't speak
outsider
to.
like
It
looking at
was
it,
more
but
just like,
okay.
watching friends who like started doing that kind of
Okay, right.
research, and so I kind of glommed on I very early to astrophysics because I think as a college freshman it was a little bit more. There was something like I could kind of picture the structures of like, okay, here's what I'm trying to study,
Right.
and it helped that the first summer after college, both my brother and I had wanted to do a little bit of astronomy research, but also wanted to spend some time at home. And one of the professors where my parents teach is an astronomer and let us work in her lab for a summer. For free, so it was allowed us to get a taste of what astrophysics research could be like, and we both
Right.
really enjoyed it. And it happened to be galaxy and a little bit of cluster work. So it was all very synergistic towards the eventual pathway towards studying galaxy clusters.
Okay, so
Uh,
what was the moment that you were really attracted to this thing and started doing your career? Because I think there's usually a defining moment for people because mostly
yeah,
these interviews that I have done, it has never been by accident. People
yeah,
chose it or like got back to it or like something happened or like there was a deep memory in the middle.
yeah.
There
I
is
don't. I mean, no,
something. I don't know.
no. I
It
know.
was
Yeah,
that
like I
was
mean, I had a
that
lot
like
of
that
friends
for you?
who like, oh, I went camping when I was a kid and I saw the Milky Way and it was really
Right.
cool. I didn't have that kind of moment per se. I mean, I have memories of going to planetariums
All right.
and stuff like that, and always thinking that it was really cool. Um, but I mean, I think for me, it's a little bit of just sort of what I was looking for in a science career.
All right.
I spend a lot of time drawing and doing art, and I like that astronomy gets you to. It's not, obviously it's not art, but
But
it's a
it's
highly
closely
aesthetic
related to
science.
art. It's
That
undeniable,
yeah,
like they're
you know, th-
closely tied to each other.
yes.
As you
So
say, it's
like
like aesthetically pleasing to
yeah, I
just
mean, we
see.
make three color images not just because we can
Right.
learn something about them, because they look nicer.
No, right.
And anytime you
But
you open out something in DS9, your choice of your choice of colors and scaling, it is an aesthetic choice. So
no,
I
but
think
deeply speaking, like arts is a very abstract type of discipline. Science
yeah,
is also very abstract. So you need to do
yeah,
a lot of thinking, a lot of imagination is involved.
yeah,
So, I mean, pure mathematics, for example, has always been pure art for me. I
yeah,
think like that is like really artistic.
mhm,
But in astronomy as well, we have that type of concept.
yeah,
I mean, it's like invoking something inside of you that's quite like spiritual,
mhm,
artistic, and very peaceful. Most of it you do for yourself. So these are all the traits that are common between arts and astronomy, I
yeah,
believe.
yeah. No, yeah. So
So
no,
you also
yeah, I
have
totally
this
agree.
artistic
Yeah,
dimension of yours. You're also doing drawing
yeah. So yeah,
and other
I
stuff.
did it.
So
Yeah.
what is the
So
span of that and how
I
much is it affecting your type
I
of
mean,
work?
I think it's just that like I like sort of being able to kind of visualize what I'm studying, and
Right.
and sort of build a picture in my mind of what how are we. learning more information about something, or like how are we breaking it down? What is sort of, all astronomy is sort of a cosmic puzzle hunt of just, trying to figure out with what limited data that we have,
Right.
what can we tell about these systems. So I think I like, both those aspects of, the aesthetics, and then also just like kind of putting together the pieces, whether I'm, putting them onto a page or onto code, or into a paper, of just like kind of constructing, you know, the kind of finished product of here is our analysis, in a similar way that I would construct a drawing, or some kind of art piece of artwork. So I think for me, that's one of the things that drew me to astronomy. I also think that one of the other things that I really like about astronomy is that it is relatively inviting to the public. I don't know how if you've ever had this, but like when I was in high school and college, and I said I studied physics and really liked physics, people would be like, "Oh, you must be so smart," and that's where the conversation ended. It was like, "Oh, you must be a genius. I could never do physics." The end. But if you say you do astronomy, people are like, "Oh, did you see this thing about like a comet?" Or,
Right,
"Oh,
because there's
what
so
about
much
this
public
thing?" Like,
outreach.
"Oh,
Yeah, right.
I saw something with Jupiter," and it's like there is just a natural curiosity
Right.
about space that,
True.
I think, as we are entering a society, specifically in the US, but I think true all throughout the world,
Right.
where people are becoming increasingly, unfortunately, skeptical of science. I think
Right.
astronomy is
These years,
one of
right.
the few places where there is still a natural curiosity. So
Mm.
people will ask questions, and it won't just be an immediately dismissive, "I could never understand this." And
Right.
maybe it's true if you do biology or environmental sciences, or chemistry, but obviously I can't speak to that. I can only speak to that when I said I studied physics, I never got any follow-up questions. But when
I
I
mean, I
studied,
had this
yeah.
like weird experience, like the very reverse of this, like quite the
Okay.
opposite. So we were sitting at the dinner table once, and there was this guy whom had zero relevant degrees to the field altogether, and he just started asking me that, what do you think about the quantum field theory coming together with gravitational waves like stuff, and then like general relativity uniting with the quantum physics, etc., and then what do you think about the theory of everything? And I was like, okay, I think I'm not the person who's qualified to talk about this.
Yeah,
Firstly,
that's a grand
then I don't
question
know if
there.
you're qualified to be asking that question. So honestly, mostly my experience has been I received a lot of difficult questions about physics.
Mm.
So in astronomy, I was way more comfortable answering questions because it's
Yeah,
just something that is like more tangible.
yeah,
But
no, I totally
when you
agree.
get to physics, it's very difficult question. I mean, I
Yeah.
have a very good knowledge of quantum field theory and then also general relativity because that was what I wrote my master thesis on. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I'm not feeling quite comfortable talking about it at the dinner
Yeah.
table. Like I might say something that sounds very weird, and I don't want to mislead people as well. I also don't do public outreach, so that was a
No.
little bit difficult. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. We have talked a lot about this also with people who are professional science communicators, that this is one of those spiritual practices, right? That everyone is looking up and then connecting to something that's bigger
Yeah.
than them. Like this is a shared space. I mean, I very recently interviewed someone who had written a piece on the ongoing war in Beirut, Lebanon.
Mhm.
And they had done astrophotography in that environment because
Oh,
the
nice.
skies are quiet, they're very dark in the situation of war. So I think, yeah, like it's a spiritual practice for everyone. This is
Yeah.
why people love it. But for us,
Yeah.
it's a very different dimension because it's problem solving as well. Like you're connected
Mhm.
at a much deeper level.
Yeah.
So how did it come together for you, all of this? Like you have an artistic aspect to your
Yeah.
character, you have like this
Mhm.
problem solving thing, then you're also very much involved into connecting both of these dimensions and then like putting these things
Yeah.
together and then like producing artwork. So it's not like a practice that is completely separate
Oh,
from what
yeah.
you're doing. So, firstly, like how did you deal with all of this early on? Because I think if you're a young researcher, when you're a
Mhm.
college student, you're very talented and you have
Mhm.
all these things going for you. It must be very difficult to make a decision that where you're going. And
Yeah.
secondly, like how was the mental toll of this for you? You were like, okay, like I have this like burst of
Yeah.
creativity and energy, and what is the best way to move forward with this? Did you have a
Yeah.
mentor who also guided you in this? Because in your family, I suppose they couldn't advise you much It
I
shouldn't
mean,
be external
my,
factor.
I mean, when I was though graduate school for literature is very different than graduate school for
Mhm.
astronomy. My parents, it's similar enough in terms of you take qualifying exams, you have your classes, you're writing a dissertation. Obviously, the way you write a dissertation is very different in the humanities versus in the sciences. I mean, it helped obviously with the have of my brother there that we could, bounce ideas off one another, but also we went to grad school in separate places, so like we could compare. Oh, well, what did you do? Like you did this class, what was the perspective that you got here? We approached it this way, and also share papers and ideas in terms for like coding different things and whatnot, and have a natural collaborator, just a text message away, was always very useful. And I think, from a sanity standpoint, I think, I never had to worry that like, okay, like, well, when I go home, okay, my parents aren't really going to understand because it's like, look, it's 50-50 split. Two of us are astronomers, two of us aren't. So like the odds are
Right.
that, someone's going to understand what I'm trying to do or what I'm working on.
Your
Um,
path was more horizontal. You had good companions. You
yeah,
didn't have like it
yeah.
was not vertical. It was not like
No, I mean,
something coming
yeah. I mean,
down like on you. It's just
yeah. I
basically
mean, I will say
exchange of
I had good
ideas.
mentors in both college and graduate
Right.
school, for kind of figuring out what I wanted to do or what research opportunities there were. I worked with basically one person in college, and then doing some galaxy cluster work, and then a different person,
Right.
I guess two people in college, and then one person who was sort of connected to one of the people in graduate school, and then sort of have built a network of different cluster scientists that I collaborate with. But I do think it's sort of important to find your place within the community and see, like that first time either you're presenting like your work or publishing a paper. It's incredibly nerve wracking to know like are other
Right.
people interested in this because. I know for
Right.
me, whenever I would present in graduate school, like there was only a very small contingent of people doing galaxy
Right.
cluster work at
Right.
Boston
Of
University.
course.
So
Right.
it wouldn't be like, oh, well, everyone would have questions because it's like, okay, most of my friends, if they studied stars or exoplanets, like they don't know about that much about quenched galaxies. So it's like, okay,
Oh,
like
right. Of
that's not
course.
going to be, I'm
Right.
not going to get super in-depth questions. So I do
Right.
think that I have found the galaxy cluster community is very open and inviting to people, specifically the Heisey cluster community. So that I was lucky enough to be able to present at a few international conferences in graduate school, and I found that uh, the kind of generation above me, so people who were postdocs or very new faculty, were very both inviting, but also interested in what I had to say, even if it was just more picking their brains and asking them questions about their work or things that they had presented on. But they didn't feel like there was sort of a gatekeeper of like, well, you must do X, Y, and Z, or really your supervisor should be asking these questions, or
Right.
to have your supervisor send an email about
Right.
collaborating or something like that.
Right.
And I think I think because most astronomers are pretty open to collaboration.
Right.
I think it made it so that I could sort of kind of ease my way in because I sort of had a project that I was working on in graduate school, but it was we were trying to figure out where is this going to go, and I think having people that were outside of the project that we could bounce ideas off of or be like, hey, can we compare to your sample to see
Mm.
can we have your data to compare to it so that we can see, is our methodology making any sense? Or are we like, yes, it works for us, but actually we may not be detecting anything because,
Right.
we have found, you know, a glitch in our color, in our,
Right.
galaxy color measurements where, yes, we detect over these over densities,
True.
they're not real or something like that.
Right.
Thankfully, that was
Right.
not the case.
Yeah. Right.
But, but I think, yeah, there were times when, and there are still times when I've worked on projects where it's like, okay,
Mm.
I'm invested in this, but
Okay.
if other people, if I'm struggling to get my collaborators interested, it's one thing to be
Mm.
like, I'm really busy, I can't work on it, but it's another thing to be like, hey, here's the work, any thoughts? And like, if I'm hearing nothing, it's like, okay, that can be
Okay.
a little terrifying because
Okay.
you
Right.
obviously you want, the
You
point
want
of doing
impact.
science
Right.
is
True.
it's
No,
not
it's not
necessarily
like
just like impact, but
isolated
like,
work because with physics you can
yeah,
do that, right? I mean, you can be
yeah,
like three, four authors or like even be like single author paper. It
yeah,
still can be like a very impactful one. But our type of work is just like you're continuously in this ecosystem that you
yeah,
should have this external validation from people.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
impacts your work a lot. I suppose.
Yeah, and you just want other people to, it's one thing to say like, okay, is my paper
You
going to
want
be
to do
cited
something
a
useful for
thousand
community, I
times?
believe,
Yeah,
right?
but are people excited by the work that you're
Right.
doing? And
True.
it's always, great to hear, to either talk to people at conferences or get a random email and be like, hey, I saw your paper, it was really cool. Have you thought of X,
Right.
Y, and Z? Like,
True.
and I think the way that the astronomy community, at least on the extragalactic side, is,
Right.
we are open to those kind of discussions and interactions. And I
You
think,
always want to create engagement, kind of.
yes.
It's not also like being like impactful. You don't want to do type of science that is like very isolationist because
Mhm.
like nothing comes out of this. It's like
Yeah.
astronomy is like moving towards this very collaborative
Yeah.
type of research. I mean, so far it's been you could do case studies like one by one objects, etc. Right now
Yeah.
we're at the era of very large surveys. So I think that type of research is like going outdated, and then we are
Yeah.
like exposed to huge data that is like coming down by Roman or like it's like different surveys that are going to
Mhm.
be done by LSST, for example. So more we're moving towards analysis, like even, which
Yeah.
is like becoming less about the data itself, about the collaboration, about the surveys, rather than scientists themselves. And I don't know, like maybe we're moving towards collaborations like Largo, Virgo, or like LSC, maybe. So, like, I mean, maybe like astronomy is
Mhm.
also having something to learn from other collaborations, other fields in physics that are much bigger than ours, and you cannot do much without collaboration. But I think like
Yeah.
there's still a space to do that type of like
Yeah.
isolated research, like sorta,
Yeah.
let's say.
I mean, but I mean, I think also like even not necessarily the largest collaborations, but even just
Right.
like a small collaboration is useful because you have, just other people, like, especially when you're building your methodology.
Right.
It's important to like, if I'm sitting in a room by myself and saying, well, here's how I'm going to do this, there's probably going to be something that I haven't thought of. Or,
Of
it's like,
course.
okay, yeah, X, Y, and Z,
Yes.
this is true,
Right.
but what happens if, you're what in like, with the 1 in 20 scenario where it's this, and it's like, okay, how am I missing
Right.
that? How do I account for that? And I
True.
think, even if you're saying, even if with all, when we have all of this data from LSSC, Roman, Euclid, even
Right.
and then all the JWST data that's publicly available, knowing the pitfalls and how different data products are released and produced and compare in various aspects makes it it's obviously it's impossible it's going to be impossible to be on top of everything.
Oh
So
yeah, of
having
course.
say
Right.
saying like here is a sample that we have built, let's see what we can do with it. I think is really important because by 2035 there's going to be more data. I mean, even now there's more data than we know what to do with.
Of course, right.
Like
And we
at
don't
this
have the
point.
workforce to work with all of that
Yeah.
data, and we're just moving from contract to contract. So that's
Yeah.
becoming very difficult to even stay on
Yes.
top of our own projects.
Yeah.
So it's very
You know.
challenging time for everyone, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So again, like I'm going back to my question.
Okay.
If you want to very briefly wrap all of this up and say that, how did you become an astronomer? What do you say?
Okay. I like
I know it's a very challenging
it's
question, but there are
yeah, it's a
like
different because
different stages,
like I
right?
knew. Like
Because you've
when I was
also like invested your entire life on this.
yeah.
Like
I
you
mean when I was
moved from one continent to another, then like moved
yeah.
another time. I mean, like this is no
I
joke. I mean, it
yeah. I
has
mean
impacted all of your life
you know,
altogether.
yeah, obviously, like, part of it is, when I was in graduate school, like, obviously, I liked doing the astronomy research, not, obviously, you don't go to graduate school if you're not interested in something to begin
Of
with.
course, right.
But then you don't stay on in the field if you don't really like doing the work. I mean, it
Of
doesn't matter
course.
if you're good at it or not. Obviously, I had a lot of friends who were really great astronomers, but decided, they didn't want to do the postdoc game and they
Right.
left the field.
True.
But part of it is like it's trying to envision, well, what other thing do you want to do with your life, and
Right.
for me it's at least for now, the weighing the benefits. I still love doing astronomy and getting to share astrophysics with people. So at some point, would it be nice to not move every 3 years, especially crossing
Right.
continents? Yeah, that would be nice. To settle down and be like, okay, this is like a
Right.
home base, but I like getting to experience different cultures, but also getting to do the astronomy that I think is really interesting and
Right.
exciting. So, at some point in graduate school, I guess I mean, maybe I probably started referring to myself as an astronomer in graduate school, but I think when like that first time I went to like an international conference and I got some kind of validation Because I
Mhm.
know for me, my first author paper took an absurdly long time. The referee process was very long, over a year,
It's a shared
and
experience for many postdocs.
you
You know,
know,
like the
so it
first
was
paper
like
took
one of these
forever
things where
to
it's
come
like
out.
I am craving some external validation to
Right.
just say like yes, I'm doing this. So because that took so long, it was like just getting to see other people think like, oh, that what you're
Right.
working on is really interesting.
Can you do
I
this
think
or
that's when
not?
you felt that's when I felt like okay, like I
Right.
really can call myself an astronomer and not just someone
Right.
who's dabbling in astrophysics. Yeah,
Which is very hard
yeah,
work to do because not
yeah,
everyone is just fortunate enough to do that. Many people just want to do
yeah,
that, but then they don't have the opportunity, they don't have the
yeah,
resources. They don't want to do this because they're like, okay, after this, now what? We have so many PhD graduates who are very talented
yeah,
people, but they just quit afterward because,
yeah. I
as you
mean,
said, like they don't like the lifestyle, they don't like the
yeah,
way the job is, they don't like the environment. So I have seen great talents leaving this field and the
yeah.
other ones who are like more average but then very persistent and then like do consistent effort, they're the people who
Mhm.
actually win like
Yeah.
the lottery
I
if
mean
you
the lack of job security in
right
I mean obviously if you get tenure at a university that is job
right
security it's not easy to get it's not
right
easy to get a faculty job it's not easy to get tenure and I
right
think like I have friends who went to med school and like like the like there's it seems to be that there's more of a career track in certain things if you're a lawyer an engineer a
right
doctor of like okay
right
like here's sort of how you did your professional degree and here's how you
Mhm.
become someone who actively works in that field
Right.
like obviously with the sciences it's a little different in astronomy because we don't really have an industry
Right.
obviously like you could work for SpaceX or something or other companies but you're not
Right.
really doing astrophysics if maybe if you study the
No,
sun if
no,
you're doing solar flare
it's just
stuff, you could,
impossible,
work
right?
for those companies, but,
True.
there's no industrial astrophysics. So
Right.
it is difficult to, if you have limitations, if you find it, if you really, you need to be geographically in a certain location, if
Right.
your finances are such where it's like, I need to get a job, a job that pays X so that I can pay off student loans.
Right.
If you're, or even if you're just like I don't want to move to China or move to Europe. I really just want to stay somewhere in the U.S. It can be difficult, unless you're a superstar to sort of dictate. Well,
Right.
I'm going to go here. Um, you know, so it. I mean, academia is tough, and I think it's better that there are more people. I think the pool for academia is ever increasing, and I think that's great. I don't think uh, the academia of the 1920s when it's a bunch of old white guys sitting in a room that's not
Oh,
great
right.
we
Yeah,
should
I mean
not
that
be
was a
that at all
disaster, right? I mean,
but
people say
it
it was the
would be nice
golden
if there
age. Yeah,
was
like, but now, right.
with the increase in the number of people pursuing degrees if there was an increase in the number of jobs for people to stay in the
Right,
field
I know.
like
How many women
let's
even had the opportunity to do
yeah
science? Jesus Christ. It was just
yeah
a it was just a bunch of white old men. No,
yes
the situation back then was real bad. Like it was really
yeah
disastrous, like tragic. So I'm very happy that I'm doing science in this like era because especially
yeah
for a woman like me, like brown skin Muslim and like coming from a third world country that's not very popular here as well, it would have been very difficult for me to
mhm,
do any type of sciences, even 30, 40 years back, like not even
yeah
that long ago. So right now we've improved a
yeah
lot. I think like this is the best
yeah
times we've ever had in terms of diversity and then giving chances multiple times to people.
yeah
So it has
yeah
definitely improved. Like
yes
people are
yeah it's just that
complaining a
they're just
lot, but but the situation is not optimal yet.
yeah we just don't have enough like it's just like there's just these how many people are getting PhDs versus how many jobs are there available, and it seems like the number of jobs has not increased with the number of people getting PhDs, at least in astronomy. So it really
And there were not that
number of jobs in academia.
options available in the
Yeah,
past, like 20
yeah,
years back, it was a great opportunity to be privileged enough to have a
yeah,
PhD. Right now, how many universities in the globe are
yeah,
offering PhD positions in astronomy, astrophysics, which are
yeah.
fancy disciplines also? It doesn't
Mhm.
have like anything to do with different industries, as you said.
Yes, yeah.
So still, like we're in a much better space, I think.
Oh
So
yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I think we totally are. It's just,
dang it,
yeah, you just
disaster.
look at you look at like the AAS job registry. It's like, okay, there's a bunch of jobs, but like there's a bunch of people applying for a bunch of jobs. It's not like,
Right.
yeah, the applicant pool gets bigger every year, and as it should, but it just means that getting jobs is hard.
Like it's
Um,
slowly, yeah. Like to have an
yeah,
actual job is very difficult. But
yeah,
At the same time, this is another discussion. We were talking to another friend, and we said that even if you quit academia, no one can say that you're no longer not an astronomer because it's the way
No,
that
yeah,
you're
yeah, I
trained.
agree.
Like, this is in your character, identity. It's like belonging to a religion but not practicing it
Mhm.
anymore. So I mean, I think like this is like something that always stays with you. It's just like your
Yeah,
protection
I,
plan is like
yeah.
the title, kind of.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely, once an astronomer, always an astronomer. I think if you probably don't introduce, you might not introduce yourself as an astronomer after you leave the field. Like it might not be the first thing
Right.
that comes in, comes to mind. But no one can take away, like, it's not like, even if you, go, off the deep end with some of the conspiracy theory kind of mod style, crazy astronomy, like no one can take away your PhD. You
Right.
have to, you earn that PhD, so you always are an astronomer, even if you're not actively using it anymore. And I think there's a lot of
I think this,
there's a lot of overlap in what you can learn, what skills you have from an astronomy PhD that can be useful in a lot of different fields. So
right.
it's not like it's just a degree that just sits on the wall.
Right.
Yeah,
No, absolutely. But I think postdocs should be counting somehow as well because you have worked in this industry
yeah,
afterward. So there's a huge difference between someone who's done like one, two, three postdocs. So there should be
yeah.
something extra on top of PhD for folks like us. But I'm very
Yeah.
surprised at how that doesn't exist these days.
Yeah. So
Yeah, like,
in China, a postdoc weirdly counts as a type of degree-ish. Like
oh,
I have a certificate that says that I was a postdoc in Tsinghua for 3 years. That's kind of a diploma. I don't think of it as a diploma, but it was given to me as a diploma. But it also like, like obviously each postdoc is a different, like one of my friends was a postdoc for 2 years. I was a postdoc for 3 years. It's like, and like, some people are postdocs for 1 year, some people are postdocs for
right,
5 years at it, like the same job. It's like, okay, like I feel like it's harder to encompass that. Whereas like a PhD, it's like, well, I earned this thing.
right, true.
An undergraduate degree, I earned this thing. It's harder to be like, well, I have seven little diplomas for 1 year postdoc positions. Like, not that that's not good, but like, how does that, it's harder to say like, well, what does that mean versus,
All right.
something else,
Yeah, like
yeah,
yeah, like too much hassle to just produce all these degrees. Like after your PhD, they're like, okay, we've
yeah,
you one, like be happy with that, and then like that is
yeah,
your title. Then like afterward, like whatever. Yeah, like, although you've
yeah,
been in academia, but you were just a close associate, let's say,
yeah.
rather than someone who's like actually affiliated with this.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
finally we can move to the
All
second
right.
question.
All right.
This was supposed to be short, but then you have a
Yeah.
lot to say. So maybe.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
So how does it feel to be an astronomer these days?
Yeah, I mean,
How do you feel?
most days I like it a lot. I think it's pretty cool that I'm paid to study galaxy clusters and
All right.
figure out how protocluster systems, these really early universe galaxy clusters, how the galaxies within them evolve, how their stars are forming, and do this all observationally. Other days it can be exhausting. The JDBC deadline was
Yeah.
brutal. Just trying to finish proposals, and then obviously when you're observing late at night, I am not great at flipping my schedule to be up all night to do observations. So like those are times when it's like, okay, this is really tiring. And also sometimes, it can just be grating that like, you can't make research happen. You can work on it and do it, but you can't make a result appear. I can say like, here is the hypothesis. We think this is happening, but sometimes I might be banging my head at my computer for weeks on end trying to tease out a result because it's just not there, or we're wrong. That like we thought it might be this and it's not that, and then it's trying to pivot and figuring out what is going on. And while that's both exciting and fun, it can be depending on it's like a wave. Sometimes there are peaks when it's like, okay, like the process is working, or I'm getting really interesting results, or I have no idea what's going on, but we're getting really fascinating results. And sometimes it's like we're getting a bunch of scatter plots that show nothing, and it's like, okay, what about
No.
this scatter plot? Still shows nothing.
And
This
the pressure
one,
we have for publication is not helping at all because
yes, yeah,
you fixated on something that you're obsessed with for like 6 months, let's say. So this is
yeah,
the downsides of doing research these days because you can bump into something that's very, very interesting, but you just put it aside because you're like, okay, I cannot see this like getting published
yeah.
in like 2 years from now. I don't know where the results are coming.
Yeah, I mean the publisher like I'm definitely envious of some of the older faculty members that I know, or even just people with permanent positions where it's like you can work on a project and be like, I'm going to just tease this away and like do like, a long standing survey of something over the span of 20 years. It's like, obviously I would love to still be doing astronomy in 20 years, but you can't, as a postdoc, you can't plan to do some kind of really sprawling analysis because you don't know that the telescope you're planning to use is going to be, still working in 20 years. And,
Right.
that you'll be able to do that. And, obviously it's publish or perish. I've seen that, throughout all the countries that I've lived in, get, the drive for publication is important everywhere. It's factored differently in different places, but like
Right.
basically, it comes down to people. The only quantifiable way we have to show that we're just good astronomers is, are we publishing work? And unfortunately, that can be tricky sometimes if you've been working for a year and a half on something and you have all of these results that show
Right.
nothing worth publishing. So that can definitely be frustrating. I mean, most of the time, I'm happy to say that you can usually find a kernel that like allows you to be like, here's the paper. But getting that can be struggling. It can be a struggle sometimes.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I know it's like quantity over quality for a lot
yeah,
of things, right? True.
yeah.
Okay, so if you want to describe yourself, like describe your feelings about being an astronomer,
Mhm.
but like from like 1 to 5 words,
Okay.
how do you describe?
Um, I mean, I think when I think of like being an astronomer, it's an inquisitive field. You're always asking questions
Right.
about and then there's a little bit of mystery because like we're kind of everything is a puzzle. We're trying to figure out. We don't have the full data set.
Right.
Maybe a little bit of inquisitiveness, mystery, maybe a little bit of exhaustion, but also curiosity.
Right.
That like because exhaustion in that like there is an onslaught of all of this
This,
astronomy research is coming out at all times, and both you trying to figure out what am I doing in this place of this, and then also keeping up with everything is next to impossible. If you want to read every astronomy paper that comes out, even in a week, it's going to
impossible.
take you a month and a half.
Right.
Most days I'm lucky if I skim the abstracts of all the papers that came out the previous day. But then I think also, we're incredibly lucky that we get to be curious and ask all these questions,
Right.
and get to to be almost like little kids staring up at space and seeing what thinking what are we trying to do, what can we say about our understanding of the universe. So I think curiosity is probably
Ending.
the yeah,
What's happening a little bit, yeah, like it's
yeah,
there. But this is a great point because we were talking to a science communicator a few days back, and he said science is beautiful because it's all about questions, not the answers. And I'm so
yeah,
glad you brought this up too. Yeah.
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 Yeah, no, I distinctly remember when I was in undergrad, someone in like like intro physics lab being like, "Well, I love physics because it's the most precise science." And I just remember thinking to myself, "We're measuring like Newton, like the acceleration due to gravity, and we're getting like 7.2. We're not getting 9.8. We're not anywhere close. It's like we are clearly physics is not the most precise. We we have methodology, but like the goal, it's not necessarily how we get the answer. It's
Maybe it's
trying to approach the answer that I think is what makes
if thing,
astronomer.
like some
Yeah,
fields like psychology, for example, that like maybe
yeah,
precise. I
yeah,
fields that have like nothing to like establish your hypothesis,
yeah,
some sort. Yeah, it's like very confusing.
yeah.
So it's basically mystery, curiosity, and
Inquisitiveness, which is basically curiosity, and
yeah,
maybe a little bit of exhaustion, just a little bit of exhaustion, just a touch of exhaustion.
okay, yeah,
But in a good way, not in a like in a draining way, but just in a you're kind of always everything is always changing and always
right.
the field is always moving forward.
Oh
So
yeah,
you're just moving trying to keep up.
yeah, right. It's moving forward very fast, right? So this is a
Yeah.
very like fresh
Mhm.
vocabulary set because it's nothing close to like what anyone else has said.
Okay.
Okay. This
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the last question, how do you envision yourself in astronomy in a few years?
Yeah.
I mean, not like long term, not what you're planning to do, but then how do you
Yeah.
see yourself like in your mental space? How do you see?
Okay.
in the
I
future?
mean, like obviously, I hope to stay in astronomy as long as I can. I really like getting to do research and also getting to, but I also really love getting to tell people about astronomy. So I think I'd like to do, something that allows for a little bit more outreach and, science communication. So, whether that's being a professor or a lecturer, where I'm interacting with people who are just kind of experiencing astronomy for the first time, or not necessarily not necessarily entirely just postdocs and faculty members, people who are, as learned or more learned than me, but like, getting to see people like kind of make those like connections of like, oh, when you're talking about like, black holes, you mean X, or when you're talking about like the frost line in planetary formation, it's like, oh, that's why we have the rocky planets versus the gas giants. It's like, oh, something like getting to see students make those connections is always really exciting. So I think I'd like to kind of find a balance where I get to do research and spend time doing that, but also spend time enticing people about why studying astronomy is really important. And I think sometimes uh, we forget that it's really important to convince everyone, and also just remind everyone that space is really cool. And it's not just like a really great
Yeah, like what
science.
it's good for? Because like many,
Yeah.
I mean, like whenever like we're just like, I mean, come,
Yes. Yeah.
okay, astronomy is good for nothing,
Yeah. There's very little. I mean, with
nothing. But
all of the science that I have done, I don't know that there are that the, I don't think any of the code I've written has any could even argue to have a practical application.
no, seriously.
There's nothing. I don't know that anything that I've done has a practical application other than like, well, here's more information about space
But I mean,
and
it's
more. But
realistic, right? I mean, if we
yeah,
have this argument that like no one should do arts as well, no one should do theater,
yeah,
do cinema, no one should do any type of like
yeah.
entertainment. But then like this is part of our being, I suppose,
Yes, yeah, no, it is part of human nature to
right?
ask to want to understand and ask questions. And I think fundamentally astronomy is a science that the goal is asking questions and trying to understand where we are in the universe. And I think it's in some ways it is the most like philosophical of the sciences, because for
True.
all of us, we can never see our subject. I mean, we can never like see it in a lab. We can't like we don't recreate a little solar system in the lab. We see it, we view it in space, but we're not like I didn't build a sterile environment and like say, okay, let's go. I did this whole little experiment for how I don't know enough about the other sciences to make it but
To me, it was
uh,
like very emotionally overwhelming for me.
yeah.
Let's say when I started studying physics, was that how it all makes sense to us. I
Mhm.
think if someone has like looked into a space and then we couldn't just find the right formula, the way of describing how things work and start having predictable sciences for all these
Yeah.
things that we're studying, then we would have been given up on this like way back.
Yeah.
The thing is that like the magic of all of this is that like how well we could connect to all of this. Then now we're sending shuttles to space and
Yeah.
like, communicating with the crafts in the orbit. Like this is mind blowing that how much
Yeah.
human beings are connected to not only the oceans but then, like also like other spaces and then, like places that are very far from us. We can still predict something and say it,
Yeah.
and that is really exotic to me. That like how because like none of this had to make sense to us, right?
No. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Like in the way that
Yeah.
it's just
I mean,
it's weird.
yeah. I mean, because in some ways, like humans had to point telescopes up to we like not that the other sciences aren't interesting, but like you wouldn't you sort of like they're all existing on Earth. You
Right.
sort of need the Earth, like you're going to get to them eventually, but like there is a version of the Earth where we just never point a telescope in space, and
Uh,
no one ever looks up for reasons unbeknownst to us, or we have a really crazy thick atmosphere and you can't see out, like we're on Venus and you can't see beyond the atmosphere or something where like
right.
so like there's a theory that there's a parallel universe or whatnot where like we don't get to do all this, and like there's it's a purely inquisitive field. So
Right.
it's really cool that we get to do this, and we get to see just how much our understanding has changed from going to space to sending all these different telescopes into space, and getting back more and more incredible data and seeing just understanding that we like galaxies form way earlier than we thought, with way more star formation earlier in the universe. And every time we put out a new telescope, we're just learning more and more that what the paradigms we thought we knew aren't quite correct, and really get to tease those and understand them.
Right, like if you deeply think about it, like none of this like actually works. And if you think about time scales, I usually like say this as one of the things to just vote people. And so like a
Mhm.
young human being is like 10 to 20 years old. A younger star is
Mhm.
like 10 million years old.
Yeah,
But then you still can look at this and say that, oh yeah, like a star should look like this and like 1 million years old, 10 million years old, 50.
yeah,
Then like you have these things that are like billion years old,
yeah. I mean,
that are like as old as the age of the universe. So
yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like with all of the galaxies I study, like, will they evolve over my lifetime? Yes. Will I see them evolve over my lifetime? Almost certainly not. You know, because like even if like a galaxy merges, like by the time the light gets to me, I'm going to be long dead. By the time to see that,
yeah.
or like an AGN triggering, like I'm going to be long dead by the time I like that light comes to Earth. So we are just such a little blip in the universe, but we get to look back and see all of this past and try
Right.
to demystify it and figure it out. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't, it's like, I mean, I don't have the words to describe. It's just
Mm.
absolutely crazy that we can
Yeah.
do everything that we can do, understand what we can understand in
Yeah,
astronomy.
totally.
And so, like, when I look back, I'm like, okay, 30 years I spent my life on this, but then what a privilege. What a
Yeah. No, definitely.
because
Definitely.
I mean, in any like normal situations, you could never have this deep connection with something that is like so far, far away from you,
Mhm.
time-wise, spatially. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the part that is like very overwhelming about astronomy. And
Yeah.
the time that you go there, it is still like blown
Yeah.
away, you know, like
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely. I mean, I think almost it's hard for. I think for some people, like astronomy is over. Even for astronomers, it's overwhelming. The scales that we look at, the
right.
time scales, spatial scales, mass scales. Like even if you're just studying planets, like planets are big, massive things.
Right.
Galaxies are even bigger, even more massive. Like and then like we go, high redshift stuff. It's like we're talking about things billions of years ago. Like
Right.
when I'm talking to family and friends, it's like it's I say I study things 10 billion years in the past. Like I don't really have a gauge of like what that means. Like it's like I know
They're talking
mathematically what it means, but it's
at
like
the dinner table.
look like if you ask me like okay, what did you have for breakfast a year ago? It's like I don't know. I maybe this. I have no idea. But like we can say like here's the galaxies billions of years ago. This is what we know about them, and I think that's I think the fact that we get to do this is obviously it's a huge privilege, that we can see the past and really kind of try to understand the universe that way.
And we can also see something about the future. Just
Yeah,
like jumbo, right? Like like how these two galaxies will merge at a certain point because of
yeah.
this, that. So yeah, I mean, very puzzling. So I hope like you're actually like putting these pieces of puzzle that you always had like mentally like built in your brain like kind of together like with this discipline. Yeah,
I,
like
I think it feels like every time I put some more pieces, that like new pieces just keep showing up, and like
I know
it's going to be a puzzle that's never finished.
infinite, right?
Yeah,
No, true.
yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, fine. I feel like I'm done with my questions, but is
Okay.
there something that you think we have missed out on? Do you want to add something? Like a closing
No,
comment or something?
I mean, like, and I guess for whoever is watching this, whether you're a young astronomer, an old astronomer, someone who's interested in astronomy, someone who just stumbled upon this on YouTube, I hope that you see that the people who are studying astronomy and are interested in space are really passionate about it, and that you take a little bit of that passion and
I
just try
think
to find something interesting, either whether it's astronomy or not. But like if you're interested, if you think any of the things we've talked about is interesting, like Google astronomy picture of the day, because that's going to give you or like any sort of like Hubble images, James Webb images. It is so easy to go down a rabbit hole of astronomy and just like find the coolest images you're going to find, and that just leads to more questions. And I think astronomy is rife for people asking questions.
right.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you agree with this or not, but everyone's connection to a space is very personal.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think yeah, I would agree.
So yeah, this was a great recommendation.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Emmet, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
No.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Have a nice one. Bye.
Thanks. You too. Bye.